In the headlines, the end of a 4-day siege at a shopping mall in Kenya's capital, a diplomatic push by the United States and Iran to reach a compromise on Iran's nuclear weapons, 4 people arrested in a major drug bust in Melbourne, and the America's Cup set for an exciting finale. Good morning, ABC News with Alan Knight. The deadly mall siege in Kenya's capital has ended. Martin Cudahy reports from Nairobi. 5 militants have been killed and 11 suspects taken into custody.
Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta made the announcement that the deadly siege is over.
These cowards will meet justice, as will their accomplices and patrons, wherever they are.
He says 5 militants have been killed by gunfire and 11 suspects have been taken into custody. Kenyan authorities are also refusing to deny the involvement of 2 or 3 American militants and a woman from Britain. Al-Shabaab attacked the shopping centre on Saturday. Scores of people have been killed and more than 170 injured. During the final assault on the shopping complex, 11 Kenyan troops were taken to hospital, and of those, 3 have since died. Martin Cudahy, ABC News, Nairobi.
A leading terrorism expert says Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group responsible for the Nairobi attack, is likely to receive an influx of new recruits after the deadly mall siege. MJ Gauhel from the London-based Asia Pacific Foundation says other terrorist organisations will now want to form links with the Somali-based militant group.
The reality is that all these groups do start to then cooperate with each other, and the kind of publicity that Al-Shabaab has got over the last 4 days means that they will get new recruits, they will get new funding, and other groups will be interested in forming linkages with them.
The Iranian and American presidents have used their speeches to the UN General Assembly to give impetus to a diplomatic push for a deal that could curtail Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons. North America correspondent Jane Cowan reports from the UN.
Barack Obama responded to recent overtures from Iran's new president that he's open to a nuclear deal.
I want to be clear. We are encouraged that President Rouhani received from the Iranian people a mandate to pursue a more moderate course.
In his speech hours later, the Iranian leader Hassan Rouhani weighed in.
Our national interests make it imperative that we remove any and all reasonable concerns about Iran's peaceful nuclear program.
The next step comes when the US Secretary of State John Kerry meets his Iranian counterpart later this week. Jane Cowan, ABC News, New York.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the talks over Iran's nuclear program as a smokescreen.
Iran thinks that soothing words and token actions will enable it to continue on its path to the bomb. Like North Korea before it, Iran will try to remove sanctions by offering cosmetic concessions while preserving its ability to rapidly build a nuclear weapon at a time of its choosing.
Federal police have made one of the biggest single seizures of ephedrine in Australia's history. Louise Willis reports.
The AFP says it seized 274 kilograms of ephedrine, a drug used in small amounts to make cold medicine, but also a key ingredient in the illegal drug crystal meth. The ephedrine was hidden in a shipment of rice from India into Melbourne and was discovered during a multi-agency investigation. The Australian Federal Police, the Department of Agriculture and the Customs Service were involved and describe it as one of the largest single seizures of ephedrine in Australia. 4 people have been arrested accused of involvement in the importation and intended distribution of the ephedrine.
The first debate of the federal Labor leadership campaign has been held in Sydney. Here's political reporter Eliza Borrello.
Bill Shorten opened by telling the crowd they were helping make Labor history. Under the party's new rules, he and Anthony Albanese need to convince rank-and-file ALP members, not just their colleagues, that they should lead Labor. Mr Shorten has a slogan:
the party, the policies and the people.
As does Mr Albanese.
Vision, unity and strength.
It was a relatively tame affair. Mr Albanese said he had the experience to lead Labor, while Mr Shorten flagged setting up a sovereign wealth fund to help cover the cost of the nation's ageing population. 2 years ago, he said coalition frontbencher Malcolm Turnbull's support for a sovereign wealth fund was premature. Eliza Borrello, ABC News, Canberra.
The Education Minister, Christopher Pyne, is planning a shake-up of the higher education system, including reintroducing caps on places. Here's Jane Norman at Parliament House.
Labor abolished the cap on university places to give more people access to higher education, particularly those from a disadvantaged background. In an interview with 7:30 in July, Christopher Pyne said the coalition had no plans to restore the cap, saying the more people going to university, the better. But Mr Pyne now says he's concerned that the demand-driven system is undermining quality, and his office has confirmed he is considering reintroducing a cap on places. A spokesman for Mr Pyne has also confirmed he wants to abolish the compulsory student services and amenities fee, which is about $270 a year. It was scrapped by the Howard government but brought back under Labor.
The Green Senator, Lee Rhiannon, says she's not surprised Mr Pyne is moving to scrap the fees, but she's warned it will adversely impact students.
The Abbott government needs to get over their ideological objection to these fees and to student organisations. They seem to think they're just protest organisations, where in fact they provide a range of services from childcare, counselling, assistance with accommodation. And this is becoming more and more vital as students are under so much financial pressure.
A remote broadband advocacy group says there should be a representative on the NBN board who understands remote Australia. John Hugan from the Broadband for the Bush Alliance says 85% of Australia is classified as remote. The Communications Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, has confirmed that he asked the company's 7 board directors to resign, and all but one have done so. Mr Hugan says the reconstituting of the board presents an opportunity for a voice for remote Australia to be represented.
So having someone with the voice, someone with the experience, will help ensure that remote Australia doesn't end up being the forgotten backyard of Australia's new telecommunications world.
This is ABC News. It's 8 minutes to 8. A report by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows Australia is continuing to increase spending on health. Here's Elise Pianagona.
The most recent report shows Australians spent over $140 billion on healthcare in 2011-12. That's up from $133 billion the previous year and $83 billion 10 years earlier. The Institute's CEO, David Kalish, says the public health system has received the majority of the increased spending.
We're also seeing that that's been largely in public hospital services, so that's responsible for about a third of the increase in recurrent expenditure.
Almost 70% of healthcare spending is funded by governments, both federal and state, with the remaining 30% funded by individuals and private health insurers.
Perth's outgoing Chinese Consul General says China and Australia should expand their relationship in agriculture and animal husbandry in the mining boom cools. Here's Catherine Diss.
Madam Wang Yino has used one of her last public speeches as China's Consul General in Perth to talk about the importance of China's relationship with Australia. Speaking at a business function in Perth last night, she talked about the potential to develop other economic ties with Australia outside of the mining industry. She said Australia must look past the end of the mining boom and instead towards agriculture. Duncan Calder from the Australia-China Business Council says Chinese companies are looking to form joint ventures with Australian companies rather than buying farmland outright.
Chinese companies are very keen to secure arrangements that can see them accessing food supply.
Madam Wang will finish her 3-year appointment this week.
Back overseas, and an earthquake has killed at least 46 people in Pakistan. Andrew Riddle with the details.
The magnitude 7.7 earthquake centred in the Awaran district of Baluchistan, but was felt as far away as New Delhi and Dubai, sending people streaming into the streets. The quake destroyed large numbers of the mud brick houses which are common in the area, with one official saying it destroyed 30 to 40% of them, leaving thousands homeless. The provincial governor has declared an emergency, and military rescue teams are on their way with supplies. The quake also created a 30-metre wide island off the Gwadar coast in the Arabian Sea. Local television captured the moment a new stretch of rocky terrain lifted above sea level.
In his first public comment since retiring, the former Pope Benedict has denied covering up child sex abuse by priests. Here's Europe correspondent Barbara Miller.
The former Pope's comments were made in an 11-page letter to the author of a book on the problems facing the Catholic Church. Excerpts from it have been published in the newspaper La Repubblica. The former Pope, now referred to as Emeritus Pope, says he acknowledges the abuse of minors by priests with profound consternation. But he says he never tried to cover up these things. He goes on to reject the assertion that the abuse of children is more common in the Church, saying research has shown that the percentage of of priests guilty of these crimes is no higher than in comparable professional categories. Barbara Miller, ABC News.
The first television campaign to promote WA tourism in 3 years has attracted a mixed response, with some dismissing the images of couples canoodling in the outback as bland. Here's Erin Park.
Tourism WA will spend $3.6 million screening 2 ads on Perth and Eastern States TV and cinema screens in a bid to lure travellers back to regional WA. The Tourism Council's Evan Hall says the slow-motion images of romantic couples enjoying the Kimberley outback will appeal to the target demographic.
It's very much focused on a couple market coming away for a romantic and emotional holiday and experience.
One of the ads was shot partly within the Shire of Halls Creek, but Economic Development Officer Lara Wild's not impressed.
Watching that ad, it was a bit bland. There's so many exciting things that they could have put in there.
The ads are due to start screening this week. Erin Park, ABC News, Broome.
Wildlife authorities will carry out a mass crocodile removal operation around Broome after a significant increase in sightings this year. Natalie Jones explains.
Warmer waters this year made for perfect breeding conditions, and wildlife rangers are flat out handling an increase in crocodile sightings. Beaches have been closed dozens of times in recent weeks. Last week, tourists gathered at Town Beach to see a 3.5-metre crocodile. The Department of Parks and Wildlife's Peter Carstairs says it was big enough to devour an adult.
Came into about 40 metres of the shoreline, so it must have something around Town Beach that it's interested in.
The authorities now want every crocodile out of the water before someone gets hurt. Traps have already been laid. Natalie Jones, ABC News, Broome.
Sport now, here's Steve Pearce.
Fremantle's coach Ross Lyon has cast doubt on whether Hawthorn's Lance Franklin will be fit enough to have a big impact in Saturday's AFL Grand Final at the MCG. Franklin injured his elbow in last weekend's win against Geelong, but says he's fit and ready to face the Dockers. Lyon told Fox Sports while he's wary of Franklin's ability, elbow injuries are notoriously tough to overcome.
We've certainly gone through the archives and we cut out a lot of edits, looking at Lonergan, how he's played on him and how he's handled him. He comes in with an injury cloud, buddy. The elbows, I know there's significant injuries, so will it affect his marking or his physicality? We're not sure.
Hawthorn midfielder Jordan Lewis says he's ready to help stop Dockers ruckman Aaron Sandilands if called upon. The 27-year-old says his side will do whatever is needed to limit the impact of the 211-centimetre Sandilands.
I might need a step ladder to get over Aaron, but yeah, I suppose if we need help in that area, whether it be me, whether it be someone else, clearly he's got the height over our ruckman, but we'll back them in first and foremost.
Brisbane's triple premiership player Justin Lepich is the AFL club's new coach, replacing former teammate Michael Voss, who was dumped last month. And Dutch cyclist Ellen van Dijk is celebrating her win in the women's individual time trial at the World Road Championships in Italy. The 26-year-old beat New Zealand's Linda Willemsen by 24 seconds to notch her first world title. Australian Shara Gillow was 12th, 1 minute and 20 seconds behind Van Dijk.
And 2 wins by Team USA in the America's Cup on San Francisco Bay this morning have set up a sudden death finish in the quest for sailing's greatest prize. Here's New Zealand correspondent Dominic Schwartz.
Here they go, here's the move.
Hundreds of Team New Zealand fans watched the televised race on Auckland's waterfront, hoping as they have every day for the past week that their team would win one more race to clinch the America's Cup.
Oracle's up.
After a disastrous first race today, the Kiwis started well in the second, but Cup defender Team USA stole the lead and continued its remarkable comeback. It's now won the last 7 races to equal the score with New Zealand. The next race, scheduled for tomorrow, will decide the victor in what is already the Cup's longest ever regatta. Dominic Schwartz, ABC News, Auckland.
A storm front which passed over the southern half of the state last night has caused widespread power blackouts. Western Power says the storm blacked out 3,800 homes and businesses in Albany and Denmark. Another 3,000 lost power in Manjimup, Bridgetown and Margaret River. A Western Power spokeswoman says the latest damage is disappointing as crews worked tirelessly over the past 2 days to restore power to 20,000 homes affected by a storm on Sunday night. She says power should be restored to the homes affected by last night's cold front by midday. And the forecast for Perth today is isolated showers this morning, mostly sunny this afternoon. Winds southwesterly at 15 to 25 kilometres an hour, becoming westerly and light in the middle of the day. A forecast maximum of 20. Tomorrow, a few showers and 21, and Friday cloudy. We're heading for a maximum of 20. Right now in Perth, it's 16.2. ABC News.